I never thought I'd be the kind of person to believe in haunted houses. I'm not superstitious, never was. I always chalked ghost stories up to bad wiring, creaky wood, or overactive imaginations. But there's something about living alone, truly alone, that strips away your confidence. Something about total silence that amplifies the smallest sounds. And in my case, those sounds turned out to be more than just old pipes and shifting wood. I moved into the house in early October. It was a 2-story rental outside Cincinnati, tucked at the end of a quiet street. A little too cheap for the area, honestly, but the landlord blamed that on it being just old. Built in the 1940s, it had charm, wooden floors, antique light fixtures, a narrow staircase that groaned when you climbed it, and a big oak tree leaning over the roof like it was listening in. I signed the lease in 15 minutes. The first few days were uneventful, peaceful even. I worked remotely, drank coffee on the porch, unpacked slowly. I remember thinking how nice it felt to finally be on my own, with no upstairs neighbors, no traffic noise, no distractions. It was too perfect, until the third night. I had just turned off the lights in my bedroom. My phone was charging. I was half asleep when I heard it. Faint, slow footsteps coming from above. Thump, thump, thump. I blinked awake, eyes adjusting to the dark. The footsteps continued, dragging slightly. Not fast, just steady, pacing. Now here's the thing. There's no real attic above the bedroom, just a crawl space. No floor, no lighting, just beams and insulation. So the idea that someone or something was walking up there made no sense. I lay there, frozen, waiting for it to stop. After about a minute, the steps came to a halt, right above me. Silence. I stayed awake the whole night, staring at the ceiling. The next morning, I convinced myself it was an animal, maybe a raccoon or a squirrel. It had to be. I called pest control and a guy showed up later that afternoon. He climbed into the crawl space, checked the vents, looked for droppings. "There's nothing up here," he said, wiping his hands on his jeans. "No signs of anything nesting. You sure it wasn't a dream?" I wanted to believe it was. But that night, the footsteps returned. This time I was wide awake. I sat on the edge of my bed, lights off, just listening. They started in one corner of the ceiling and slowly moved across to the other side. Step, step, pause, step. It was slower than before, heavier, almost deliberate, like whoever or whatever it was wanted me to hear it. I stood on a chair and knocked on the ceiling. "Hello?" The footsteps stopped instantly. I climbed down, got back in bed, and then, a few minutes later, thump, 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 right back above me. Right. By the 5th night, I was losing sleep. I'd wake up to small piles of dust and insulation on the floor beneath the ceiling boards. The air felt cold in certain spots, even with the windows shut. One time, I saw a long crack form across the plaster above me. It got to a point where I stopped using the bedroom entirely and started sleeping on the living room couch. But the footsteps followed me there too. No matter where I went, it was like it knew where I was. And then things started moving. It began with the hallway light turning on by itself, then doors creaking open, even when I knew I had locked them. One night I came home from the store and found every cabinet door in the kitchen wide open. I called the landlord, told him I was hearing noises, seeing things. He just said, "Yeah, you're not the first." I didn't know what that meant, and he wouldn't elaborate. I decided to ask around. I spoke to an older neighbor, Mr. Hughes, who had lived across the street for nearly 50 years. When I mentioned the house, he went quiet. "That place has bad history," he finally said. "Family lived there in the 70s. Father lost his job, started drinking, beat his wife and kids. One night neighbors heard screaming. Cops found the mother and 2 children dead upstairs. No sign of the father. They say he disappeared. Some believe he hung himself in the crawl space. Others think he just left." He looked me dead in the eye. "You hearing footsteps?" I didn't answer. He nodded. "Everyone who moves in hears them." That night I didn't even try to sleep. I sat up with every light in the house on. The footsteps came around 1:40 a.m., but they didn't stay on the ceiling. They moved to the wall. I heard the groan of old wood, nails popping slightly. Then, God help me, I heard them descending, as if the thing was crawling down the wall toward me. I ran outside and sat in my car until dawn. By then, I knew I couldn't stay, but I had a week left on my lease and no money to break it early. I figured I'd just stay at a friend's. But before I left, I wanted to try one last thing. I bought a cheap baby monitor with sound detection and placed it in the bedroom. That night I left the house, drove to a diner and waited. Around 2 a.m., my phone pinged, motion detected. Then audio. I opened the app and listened. At first just static, then the sound of something dragging across the floor, a low moan, then a voice. "You're not alone." I slammed the phone face down on the table and left the diner immediately. I didn't go back for 2 days. When I finally did, it was to pack and get out. I planned to grab my stuff and leave before sunset, but I made the mistake of going upstairs. There was a strange smell in the hallway, like rust and old wet earth. The air felt thick. I opened the crawlspace hatch out of some sick need for closure. Just as I started to shine my flashlight inside, I heard it, breathing, not mine, not close, deep, wet, guttural, coming from inside the crawlspace. I dropped the flashlight and slammed the hatch shut so hard the hinges snapped. As I turned to leave, I heard something land behind me. Not a small sound, not like a mouse or a bird, something heavy, thump. I didn't turn around, I ran. I didn't stop until I reached my car, and I didn't look in the rearview mirror even once. I broke the lease, left furniture, clothes, everything. I moved into a new apartment across town, modern building, no crawl spaces, concrete ceilings. It took weeks before I felt safe again, until last night. I was lying in bed just about to fall asleep when I heard it. A step, just one, coming from above my ceiling. And here's the thing. This apartment has no crawl space, no attic, nothing but solid cement. So whatever followed me here, it doesn't need an attic anymore. It knows where I sleep.